This is a time in the program when we take an opportunity to honor each one of the 5 services that make up the combined armed forces of the United States. I'll say them in no particular order, however. I'll start with the Army. Army, I'm an Army veteran, but I have no prejudice. You'll see none of that during these remarks from me at all. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the Coast Guard. And we do it in a unique way. What we do is we ask someone from another service to salute another service. And then when that's done, you'll play that service song. And so if you've been a part of that service that's just saluted, ever a part of it, current, past, we want you to stand proudly while your song is played. Now, I've been involved in this for a couple of years, and they didn't let me do a salute this year. I don't know why. I thought they said toast or roast, but no, it's salute. And so I came up with this in a committee meeting with this really stupid idea. I said, why don't we do something like The Price is Right? You know, something really innovative this year, where I'll say, Colonel so-and-so, come on down. And then I thought, I went home, and I watched 30 seconds of The Price is Right. I realized what a really stupid idea that was. But it did give me an idea, because could you picture Marines or Navy SEALs and Army Rangers coming up and bidding on some items? You know, the Marines would probably be bidding on bayonets. The Air Force doesn't know we have bayonets. The Coast Guard would be coming up bringing confiscated drugs to bribe the judge. And so I decided it wouldn't work very well at all. But it did make me think about another reason why we can't do that. I don't think military people are real good shoppers. You get issued everything, don't you? I remember when I went in the military, they gave me everything I needed. So it reminded me of a story. Naturally, there's an Army person involved in this story. An Army Ranger was on vacation in Louisiana, and he decided to go shopping for some shoes. And he went to a rather exclusive shop. And he was looking at these really nice alligator shoes. And he tried them on, and they felt so good, and they were so soft. And he turned them over and looked at the price, and he was appalled. He said to the shopkeeper, how could you possibly ask for this much money for a pair of shoes? The shopkeeper said, that's the price. It's not easy to catch these alligators and get these shoes. And he said, wait a minute, I'm an Army Ranger. The swamps are right out here. We're in Louisiana. I'll go catch an alligator. I can make my own shoes. Shopkeeper says, go ahead if that's what you want to do. He said, but be careful when you head out there. There were 2 Navy SEALs in here just before you said they were going to do the same thing. So he heads out. He's out in the bayous. He's about waist deep in water, and he sees 2 guys ahead of him about waist deep in water. They look like Navy SEALs. They have spears in their hands. Just as he approaches them, a huge alligator comes up with its jaws open, about ready to clamp it on one of the Navy SEALs, and the Navy SEAL sticks a spear right through his head, throws him up on shore, and the Ranger looks up, and there are already 2 or 3 dead alligators up there. The SEALs rush up on the shore, they flip the alligator over, and they say, darn, this one doesn't have any shoes either. I was going to make that a Marine Corps joke, but there's a Marine Corps Sergeant Major here tonight. And even as a young lieutenant, I was afraid of them. So I picked on the Navy SEALs. One final thing. We're going to do the salutes here in a minute. But as you listen to the salutes, listen for the different language. The 5 services don't speak the same language, I'm convinced. That's why we couldn't have some kind of contest. Take a simple phrase like, secure the building. Now, to me, an old Army guy, secure the building. I would go in, search the building, clear the building, get everyone out, lock the doors, and put guards around the building. Wonder what the Coast Guard would do. They'd flood the area. They'd probably flood the whole area around the building and keep boats going around it. The Navy, they'd turn out the lights and lock the front door, probably. That's probably what the Marine Corps, they go in, kill everyone inside, set up a command post, and maintain it forever. So who'd I skip? The Air Force. What do you think they'd do? No, they'd negotiate a 5-year lease with an option to buy. All right, let's hear from these various services now. That's enough for me. Our first salute tonight is Sergeant Major Stephen Smith from the United States Marine Corps, who will salute the United States Army.
Thank you. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you think I got a lot of jokes, right? Yeah, Marines don't have jokes, okay. But there could be a lot of things I could probably pick on about the Army, maybe their uniforms or something, but I'm not going to do that. Tonight, though, it's my honor and pleasure to recognize the Army for their service. For more than 237 years, they have served this United States that we have. They've defended it, our freedom, everything that we have. Their birth date is 14 June 1775, and what's significant about that is we also observe Flag Day that same day in the United States. They are the most senior branch of service, and they are also the largest. Over 1,100,000 soldiers serve us, either on active duty, reserve, or our National Guard. The other thing about them is I've served with them, okay? They are a great outfit. I've served with them in Afghanistan, and I've got to see how they work, and that was during combat operations. So, a salute to the U.S. Army.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. Our next salute is by Lieutenant Commander Denise Judge. She is from the United States Navy, and she is going to salute the United States Marine Corps. Lieutenant Commander Denise Judge.
Good evening. Well, what can I say about the Marine Corps other than they've got to have the coolest uniforms out of all the services. It doesn't matter whether they're coming home from overseas or whether they just get out of boot camp, they always look like warriors. And the Marine Corps, they're rich in tradition. Everything they do marks a piece of history. Anytime a skirmish breaks out around the world, they already have the Navy on speed dial to get them there. Even down to the word Marine. It really stands for Move Around in Navy Equipment. They're also the only service when everyone's preparing for war. They're on an all-expense-paid vacation on the Great Gray Cruise Liner before they get to hit the beach. But wherever they go, I'm proud to take them wherever they want to go, because with the Marines on our side, we'll always be victorious. Thank you.
Why is theirs called the hymn and the other ones are songs? I've never quite understood that. It's the Marine Corps hymn. Marines hymn. Marines hymn. Thank you. Thank you. Our next saluter is Lieutenant Commander John Dittmar. He's from the United States Coast Guard, and he is here to salute the United States Navy.
Good evening, everybody. Apologize for my voice this evening, but that's going to cut my remarks short, so I think you'll all enjoy that. And also because of my voice, I'm going to ask for a little audience participation as we go over a few little-known facts about the U.S. Navy. When I finish reading each brief statement, I would like everyone in the audience tonight to shout out fact or fiction. Here we go. Number 1, fact or fiction. The U.S. Navy is our nation's oldest continuous seagoing service. That is fiction. The Navy was disbanded by the Continental Congress for a period of almost 10 years. The U.S. Coast Guard is actually the oldest continuous seagoing service. Number 2, fact or fiction. The U.S. Army has more boats than the U.S. Navy. That is a fact, ladies and gentlemen. According to a recent article posted on the official homepage of the U.S. Army, the Navy falls short of the many vessels operated by the U.S. Army. But on a more serious note, the U.S. Navy is a military service comprised of the finest seagoing professionals. They stand the watch so that you and I can enjoy our freedom. The men and women of the U.S. Navy serve with honor and pride and sometimes pay the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. To the silent service, the naval aviators, the surface warriors, the Marines, and the Navy SEALs, we salute you, U.S. Navy.
Our next saluter is Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Loeb of the United States Army, who will salute the United States Air Force.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to honor the Air Force tonight. I'm going to start off with a little bit of ceremonial in the fact that I, too, was born in Dayton, Ohio, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Got to witness the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds fly overhead during many air shows. And also have a little bit of heritage and history in the fact that my grandfather was a U.S. Army Corps Airman before actually the Air Force was dissected from the Army in 1947 by the National Security Act. A few things. My dad made a pretty big and strong impression on me living in Dayton for almost 25 years. Went to the air shows, went to the United States Air Force Museum, saw about everything about the Air Force. I drank the Kool-Aid as a kid. I was blue. But then I found it. I was convinced that I had seen the real chair force. The independent sources confirm. We have a saying in the Army and Marines, it's one team, one fight. Now, the Air Force has a little different philosophy that I'd like to share with you tonight. First, little history. 500,000 active airmen, reserves, National Guard, individual ready reserves. Would you confirm that, Colonel Hannes, about that? 5,000 manned aircraft, correct? Okay, so that defines about the 1% factor. So what we have is the 99% of the airmen that actually do the work, 1% of the pilots actually take the credit for the work. Your evaluations. The Army, I've always prepared physical fitness and preparation of our units. But on the strength of your coffee and the ambient temperature that you keep your air conditioning set at for when your boss actually walks in the room, that's how your evaluations are determined by. It would be easy for me to stand up here tonight and continue to rib my fellow brothers in arms, even if they are continuing to complain about the padding on the seats and the ambient temperature of the surrounding temperature tonight. But I have served with Air Force personnel, both Prime Beef and Red Horse squadrons in Iraq, in both Basra and Baghdad. They're some of those professional engineers I've ever met. Their job is second to none. The job that they've done for base construction, airfield construction, aviators alike. With that tonight, my salute tonight is to the Air Force and all the ribbing that they take from the senior service of the Army, but to tonight, I salute the Air Force.
And our final salute tonight will be by Lieutenant Colonel Steve Hernandez of the United States Air Force, who will salute the U.S. Coast Guard.
Thank you. Thank you. It is a pleasure to be with just a bunch of great Americans this evening. Thank you. I have to be honest with you. I got an email a couple weeks ago that says, hey, new Air Force guy, new kid in town. We need you to say some words about the Coast Guard. And I was like, yeah, okay, their uniforms are half right. Okay, I'll do it. But then I thought about it a little bit, and it kind of caught me off guard. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm an old military guy. I'm now playing the back nine, as some would say, but that means I've been around. I've done my penance. I've served with the Army. I've served with the Navy and the Marines. I've done my penance, right? But the Coast Guard, admittedly, my experience was pretty limited. It was just limited, really, to watching them do port security out in Korea during some of the big exercises. So I would see them in their boats, right, cruising around the port. There they go. It was pretty cool. I was impressed. Cruising around. So I thought I'd better do a little research. And I came up with some very interesting facts. Facts number one, who knew that the Coast Guard, formerly known as the Revenue Cutter Service, is America's oldest continuous seagoing service? So when us Air Force folks laugh at the Navy and the Army for 200 years of tradition unaffected by progress, we should have been laughing at the Coast Guard guys all along. They're older than everybody. Interesting fact number two, the Coast Guard's motto is Semper Paratus, always prepared, always ready. And of course, we know the Marine motto, Semper Fidelis, always faithful. The Air Force motto is Semper Gumby, always flexible. You know, those Air Force guys, we're pretty laid back, easy going bunch of folks generally. You all know that. Interesting fact number three, the Coast Guard has two very unique clubs or organizations known as the Ancient Order of the Pterodactyl and the Order of the Albatross. These are clubs for the flyers, the air crew that fly aircraft in the Coast Guard. And I said, wow, that's interesting, because in the Air Force, we've got two very prestigious groups as well. We've got the Cool Guy Fighter Pilot Club, and then we have the Minions. So, and in case you're wondering, I happen to be a member of the Minions Club. So, in all seriousness, who here who has been to Hawaii? If you've been to Hawaii, many of you have probably saw a bumper sticker or a sign that said, Eddie would go. Eddie would go. And that's in reference to a Hawaiian named Eddie Aikau. I'm probably screwing that name up. But Eddie was a local kid there. He was a surfer and he was a lifeguard, spent most of his time up there on North Shore at Waimea Bay. And if you've ever been to Hawaii, in the winter months, December, January, February, North Shore, that's when they get the big waves. Now, I bring up Eddie because he had the reputation for being fearless. He was the best lifeguard, period. So when conditions were rough and scary, it was Eddie who would always be the one that said, here I am, I'll go. And Eddie would go. Now, fast forward to the mid-'70s, 1976, 77, someone will correct me. Eddie was on an old Hawaiian canoe, and that canoe was some 10 to 15 miles off the shore of Molokai in some very bad waters, and it took a leak, or it had a leak, and then it started taking on water, and then the canoe collapsed, and the crew thought they were going to die. But Eddie was there. And Eddie said, hey, we don't have a radio. We got to let them know we need help. And Eddie said, I'll go. And Eddie went through those rough waters. And that was the last anyone ever saw of Eddie again. Now, I share that story with you because I would submit not only is the Coast Guard a world-class organization, but they perfectly exemplify the spirit of Eddie. Because when there are terrorists and refugees and desperation along the fatal shores who's going to go? When that ship is loaded with drugs and weapons and violent men, who's going to board it? When that foreign country needs help securing its port, when the waves are 40 feet and rising and the clouds are darkening, who's going to go? It's America's Coast Guard. That's who's going to go. So with that spirit, I would like all of our brothers and sisters in the Coast Guard to please stand for the playing of the song.
Well, thank you for all those wonderful salutes.